said, my name's Sid. I'm the CEO of a company called Redly. I need the clicker, actually. It's over here. We're an international delivery company based out of Malaysia, part of the POS Malaysia group. I was asked to do a speech highlighting the importance of partnerships on the retail supply chain. And I sort of sat this morning reading through it and realized I haven't got much to say on the retail supply chain because I'm not from the retail side. But I can talk you through the importance of partnerships for my business and how it's helped us to scale and how we see it helping us going forward and why I see them as a really important part of what we do. So let's have a look at the landscape. Why are we talking about this in the first case? Well, for a start, when we look at e-com deliveries, the expectations are constantly changing and they're only getting higher. Yeah. So the market dynamics that we're dealing with, that acceleration in consumer behavior, whether that be in terms of the amount they order, how they order, the rapidity of their order, just the simple growth in e-commerce in its own right, the challenge that we're all dealing with every day, simple volume, or the cost of the disruptions that are coming into play every day. And the customers are now even starting to switch on to more and more those eco-friendly shipping methodologies, which causes a problem for all of us in terms of managing our scope 1 and 2 emissions. And then this guy over here, Donald Trump, changing his mind daily, weekly, momentarily, it would seem, a lot of the time. We have a challenge in terms of just simply reacting to the things that are in front of us, let alone planning for growth. And the reality is, customers don't care. When I say they don't care as long as they get it, is what I mean by that. Their view is, I don't care if you send it by post or by commercial. How do I even know? If they happen to be an informed customer, they might be able to tell by the label, but the reality is it means nothing to them. They don't care if it goes by sea freight or air freight, as long as it gets to me when I want it. And they really don't care whether it's going via economy, express, what methodology. It's not important to them. They don't care, as it says here, they don't care if it's a last mile courier or a postal handover. They just simply don't care. As long as it gets here when I expect it. It costs what I expected it to cost. It doesn't get broken in transit. As long as you inform them what's going on, they honestly don't care. So that's why we built Redly. As I said a moment ago, we're part of the postal network, but we're not a post. I'll cover exactly what Redly is in a tiny bit of detail later on, but as I'm not here to do a sales pitch particularly, I'm not going to bore you too much with it. We've all seen the headlines. I've just pulled a few out and tried to hide as much of it as I can, actually. But we've all seen the headlines of bad customer experience, what the impact of supply chain disruptions have had on carriers and on retailers. We know that we can't do this simply in isolation. And the challenges that come with scaling and with being the entities that we are, whether that be in terms of the high level investment that's needed, the limitations on scalability when you stand alone, or with the tech gaps that come from trying to do it all by yourself, they're almost insurmountable in isolation. No man's an island is a phrase that I really do ascribe to when it comes to partnerships. The reality is, and this, by the way, this is not going to be a 45-minute session. I'm going to try and this is the graveyard session roughly, so I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet for you all. The reality is, when we stand by ourselves, we are not able to scale as quickly as we would like. We're not able to be as robust as we would like. And unless we've got the scale of resources that you see from, well, even from the likes of our friends over at DHL and so on, you need the ecosystem that's around you. So, coming down to Redly, we built a partnership framework from scratch about 2 years ago. POS Malaysia, which is the group that we're part of, has historically had an international shipping arm. But if I'm honest, it was just kind of an unloved child in the corner. It did what it did, And it did that because we are the Malaysian national postal carrier, but not in a commercially sensible way. So around 2 years ago, this thing called Redly was brought to fruition. And what Redly does is it brings into play 3 or 4 different parts of the international business. We are the postal carrier, so we're there to serve Malaysians, both in terms of import to Malaysia and export from Malaysia, whether they be you and I on the street or businesses. We are the commercial international business of that group, which means we focus on volume from anywhere to anywhere that brings value to the group and to our customers. Okay? But we're also a transshipment carrier. We do huge amounts of volume from, as you can imagine, China, although slightly more challenging at the moment than it normally would be, but Japan and various other countries via Malaysia and other countries to the rest of the world. We're a consolidation player, and we have 3PL facilities and pick, pack, and all of that good stuff. And what we did was we brought that together under one roof. Now, whilst that sounds really strong, and it is, we were still just a Malaysian player. And Malaysia is a lovely country, but it's a small country, and its reach isn't quite as great as one would hope. So we understood from day one the only way we were going to achieve this and have an international shipping company that actually had an impact was by partnership with others. Now, whether that be people selling on our behalf, delivering on our behalf, collecting on our behalf, doing the customs and duties piece, we had to be in partnership. And there were 3 core pillars to that. They had to be reliable. They had to be strong partnerships. We couldn't lose control. When you look at the international shipping segment, the reason that people like DHL, FedEx, UPS are strong is not just because of their reach, it's because it's theirs. From end to end, it belongs to them. And so when you look at your DHL tracking, I've just had a load come from my phone about 10 seconds ago for some t-shirts that I ordered, actually from Germany of all places. I now know that they've been handed over to DHL. I will know when they're on the aircraft. I will know when they've landed in Malaysia, when they've gone through the sortation facility, and when they get to my condo. Why? Because every step of that way is a DHL step. In post and in the third-party world, we lose that typically. And that's where our challenges really start. So for us to have a partnership-based network, we had to hold on to control, and we had to make sure that people shared the data that we need and that the network that was in place was equally as robust, which brings us to connectivity and integration. Seamless the whole way through. If our partners are not part of our ecosystem, they can't be a part of our ecosystem. It's as simple as that. They have to work to our terms, and they have to work on our data terms as well. And then growth, again, strategic control. We hold the cards. If you work with us, whether you be a e-com using our services or you be a carrier supplying on our behalf, we only work with you if it works. So we don't work with every brand. I've spoken to brands in the last couple of weeks that frankly we can't work with. We would not be able to fulfill their requirements, and they wouldn't like what we supplied at that point in time. We choose our customers very carefully, and we certainly don't work with every single partner that comes and knocks on our door. We have a list of about 180 or so integrated partners worldwide as of today. Every single one of those partners has signed up to a charter and to a set of SLAs and terms that are dictated by us. Every single one of those partners, whether they are postal or commercial or data-based, have a set of penalties for when they do the job wrong, a set of SLAs they have to work to do the job right, but they also get bonuses if they do the job well, which means the power's completely in our hands. And so what does that give us? Well, it gives us a really nice, really neat hybrid network, which would not have been able to be achieved by ourselves. So 3 parts to that network. We have commercial partnerships. I've just spoken about those a little bit, but those will be actually, and we've mentioned some brands, with the brands I've mentioned. We may use DHL for our expedited service in certain lanes. We may use UPS. We may use Aramex. But equally, we work with smaller partners. Here in Singapore, we work with SingPost, of course. We have to work with the national postal operators. And for those of you that have seen me speak previously, I've not long left SingPost, so I probably do need to work with them just for friendliness' sake. Aside from them, we also work with CityLink here, or Skynet, and various others. Ninja Van, I think we all know, we'll work with them as well, as long as they'll adhere to our terms. Okay? In the UK and various other countries, we will normally have 3 to 4 partners in every single country. What that means is, should there be any problem with any individual customer, any individual partner, it's really easy for us to switch lane. Really easy to keep the continuity of service and make sure the service level stays high, but without the need to completely re-solution. Because in effect, what we're doing constantly is re-solutioning our partnerships and adding new partnerships in. We have a network of owned operations, and when I say owned, some of those are physically ours, some of those are licensed to act as if they are ours, and then some of them are franchised, depending on which country and which model. But again, one way or another, they represent themselves as Readly. They are Readly day to day. They just may be set up by someone else. That's enabled us to scale really quickly, and it's also meant that in those countries where actually the big carriers are not so good, the Vietnams, the Cambodias, the Laos of the world, we have people who have got real skin in the game, providing the services as if they are us. If you work with us in those countries, you're dealing with someone who, actually the business is really personal for them. It's their money. And that gives us a real level of resilience and actually commitment from those partners that you don't get from commercial partnerships, and you can't get from commercial partnerships. And then we are part of a postal network. And whilst everyone probably refers to snail mail and all the rest of it, the postal network's fantastic. It's 220 countries that I can access without having to speak to anyone. In the case of 150 of those, I have bilateral or multilateral deals that enable us to bring the price down and increase the SLA. So we've commercialized the postal licenses as well. And that's given in Readly is 4 main points. We're resilient. Should something go wrong, we can swap out the lane really quickly, and it very rarely impacts service levels. If it does, it's 1 or 2 parcels, and we can manage those 1 or 2 parcels. We're reliable. We know that for each service level that you require and for each parcel, we can provide the service. We don't, as I said, we don't just work with anyone, whether that be customers or partners. So I will only commit to you as a customer if you fit my freight profile, if I can actually provide those services. There's no point otherwise. We're adaptable, by which I mean we get asked for new requirements every single day. It's really easy for me to solution out a new offering if I need to. Whether I want to or not is a slightly different matter, but we can adapt to any requirements. And we're asset right. Now, when you look at our segment of the market, you'll often hear people refer to asset light. I could point to a couple of providers in the room today who are along that line. They don't own their own operations. We own our operations where it makes sense to do that. So whether that be warehousing in Malaysia that we own, whether that be sweating our existing assets or building new ones, or consolidation facilities in the UK for goods coming to this end of the world, we will only ever own the right assets in the right place at the right time. And what that means is that our network remains scalable and flexible, but is always pinpointed to focus on the customers that are in that territory. But without partnerships, there is no way we could have built this. What does the partnership actually mean for our growth? Well, over the course of 2 years, and Readly as an entity is only just about 2 years old, it means that our markets covered have gone from 50 to around 200, if I remember, 10 to around 50 on direct coverage, our operations. At this stage, if we'd been doing it by ourselves, if we'd been having to invest, I might have been lucky to get to 3 of those. 3. whereas today I think it's 52 if I remember rightly. I should say, I've been the CEO of Redley for all of 4 weeks. So some of these numbers I'm having to remember. In terms of integrations of carriers, which is actually the more important part, how do I serve you? I need those integrations. Had we not have used the partnership channel, we'd be looking at maybe one per country, and we might have got to around 30 countries in the course of the last year. But actually, we're well above that. We're well into the 150 countries, 150 carriers over, I can't remember exactly how many countries now, it's gone from my mind, but remind me later and I'll get the number. And that's because we do a couple of different things on carrier integrations. So yes, we have a direct relationship with any partner that we work with, but clearly integration takes time and it takes effort. So there are aggregators out there that aggregate the carrier integrations as well as sometimes the carrier services actually, that enable us to really quickly bring on board 30, 40 carriers at a time. And so actually that number of carriers that we've been able to onboard has largely been by 2 or 3 big integrations that have enabled me one integration for 30 carriers. It's made my scalability far quicker. It's also meant that I can plan far more markets than I would normally be able to do. As I said, I'd probably be focused on maybe 2 or 3 really core markets. From Malaysia, in reality, that's Singapore, Brunei. We have for probably quite obvious reasons, a huge market into the Middle East. And then the other major e-com markets, so China, Japan, UK, US would be focuses. But I'd be really lucky to be able to plan all 5 or 6 of those in the course of 2 years, when actually those markets are all achieved already. And it's purely through the partnership move. And then the postal market piece, even better. I don't have to do an integration there. The best or the hardest bit of work I have to do is having a conversation to increase those SLAs, make them neater for you, and to reduce the price. So it's really the partnership approach has had a really major impact on our business. So now it enabled us to expand far faster than I wanted to. Needed to, I suppose would be the right term. It's enabled us to scale at a fraction of the cost. Just to scale into Singapore was predicted to cost us well into the tens of millions of Sing dollars. It hasn't cost us even $1 million to be able to do that. Okay? Looking at the UK market, I've been in the business for 4 weeks. We didn't have a UK presence 4 weeks ago. We do have a UK presence today. It's basically cost us nothing and taken no time to do. Why? Well, probably tell I'm not Asian. I'm British. There is an element of having contacts, and that makes life easy. But aside from the contacts, actually just having a framework under which you know you're working and how to work, being able to establish those relationships really quickly has meant that we now have 2 warehouses in the UK working on our behalf, 4 carriers and 3 3PLs working on our behalf, and volume actively moving between us and them today. 0 to 4 weeks. Not bad going, okay? We've also, in that 4 weeks, set up partners in Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. 1 in most of those countries, but 1 is more than I would have been expecting to achieve in those 4 weeks. It gives us a far better customer experience. Now, like I said, the way we manage our partnerships is maybe different to the way many people manage our partnerships. You are joining a network in our case, and that means you have to work on our terms. And it does mean that you need to deliver the sort of responsiveness that we need, the sort of granularity of data that we want, and you need to just be there and be available. But that does mean that we translate that back down to the customer. We imply those same high standards on ourselves as we do on our partners, and it means that you can rely on us, and the experience is far, far better. This network also does the one thing that I always set out to do, and it wipes out the risk. Yes, I've got many partners. Yes, I can work with many more if I wish to. But more importantly than any of that, should something change, I can change quickly. Trump has put his tariffs on in the last few days. I was able to pivot some of my business away from the US lanes where it made sense, focus on the US stuff we could do, But also, for those partners of mine that were previously shipping into the US but now can't, I've been able to open up lanes to them that they weren't previously shipping to. So a really good example of that, and I suspect they're using the country as a backdoor to get into the US. I have no evidence, so I won't say who the customer is. But one of my partners needed to ship from China, then into Malaysia, and over to the UK. Now, I suspect what's happening from there is the goods are still going to the US. It's not my game thereafter, it's up to them. But they had no ability, A, to get the goods to Malaysia in the first case. They were always direct entry from China to the US prior. They certainly had no ability to go to the UK. So just by having those partnerships established and by having the technical ability to just turn the switch, turn it on for them, that partner has kept that volume flowing. Where it ends up in the end, as I say, is not my business, but certainly they haven't dipped in terms of the volume they're shipping with me. And then from a technology perspective, actually, what this partnership program does do is it means I have to stay at the edge of capabilities at all times. Going back to what I said earlier about solutioning, customer turns around to me and says, I need this, Sid. My job is to be able to provide it, not to sit there and sort of scratch my chin and say, how? Yeah, so it has meant the business has had to be far more receptive and far more capable at the technological end of things, and really has had a major impact on what we do. So, I said I was going to keep this short and sweet, and I really am. A little bit about Redley. Who is Redley? So, as I said a moment ago, we're part of the POS Malaysia Group. We're the wholly independent international arm of POS Malaysia. I report to the group CEO, but that's as far as our relationship with the group goes. I don't have to work with group companies. I do, as it happens. Most of them are pretty good, but we don't have to. We are a small team, 150 of us in total, that are wholly focused on anywhere to anywhere international logistics. Clearly, we're the experts in Malaysia, but we've set out to be the experts in everything that we do. So that means if you need customs information, if you need regulatory advice, we have the expertise on hand. It means if you need to know the best way to get goods from one country to another country, we have those expertise on hand. And as I said, we have the lanes and the knowledge and the capability available to do it. We are that part of POS Malaysia, which means I've got 225 years worth of experience to rely on in the background, and a huge group that has everything from, actually we have horses delivering in certain parts of Malaysia through to tankers and seagoing vessels and trains and planes and ground handling, all part of what I do, which means that I very seldom am lacking for a solution to my customers' requirements. And then we're a global company, yes. We have operations in around 15 countries that are ours today, okay? But it's always local operations. It's always local experts. We kind of run this on the basis of the way that we look at postmen. They're the expert in their local area. So I'm not going to say much more. I am going to give, whilst I've talked about Redley, I'm going to give you a little bit of a video about the group, what we do as a whole. One, because I love this video. I think it's a really neat encapsulation of what we do as a business. So I'll pass you on to this now. It's, if I remember right, it's entitled, So You Think We're Just a Post.
Are we just a post office? From love letters to business matters, current news to exciting promotions, we deliver them quickly and safely. For us, it has always been about delivering connections and improving lives. From bill payments, insurance and road tax renewals, send parcels, to investments, buying stamps, and more. And today, you can buy food and drinks while paying bills. We even have something for your fur kid. In line with the times and customers' demands, we are now more than just a post office. Our business has truly transformed. From logistics warehousing, pick and pack, to delivering right to your doorstep. On top of that, we also manage on-ground and in-flight operations at airports and provide digital solutions. We always strive to cater to all customers and businesses. Our operations are now greener. This is something we're also proud of. And today, we have the largest fleet of electric vehicles in Malaysia. Now that's what we call motorbike. So, are we just a post office? We're certainly more than that. And we will continue to be more. Post Malaysia, delivering connections, improving lives. Here for the nation for over 200 years and beyond.
So clearly that's a slightly Malaysia-focused message, but it gives you an idea of oh, thank you. It gives you an idea of the scale of what we do and how much we cover. There's a reason Redley exists, and it's to take advantage of that scale. Our catchphrase, our slogan at Redley is connecting the world one parcel at a time. There's a reason that was chosen. It's a very new slogan for Redley, but actually the reason it's chosen is off the back of the partnership model. When I speak to partners, when I speak to customers, I only ever talk about one customer at a time, one parcel at a time. Every single parcel that we deliver is just as important as the last or the next. And so the partnership model needs to focus down to the individual customer and down to the individual parcel. And again, as I said earlier, only by that being the case are we successful. So that gives you an idea of how partnerships have been important to us. The speed and scalability that they've managed to provide us with. If there are any questions at this point, I'm happy to take them. But I told you I'd keep it short and sweet, and I've managed to do that. Thank you.
You mentioned like Post Malaysia, it's always evolving, it's growing, it's changing. And do you know any challenges that the company has been faced the last couple of months or years?
So I've known Post Malaysia for about 15 years.
Okay, good to know.
Which is, so when I say I've only been around for 4 or 5 weeks, there's some faces I recognize in the audience who met me in my previous guise. It's a little disingenuous. I've known the company for a long time.
Okay.
But I would say, if 10 years ago, and my head of sales is at the back there, who I've known for as long as I've known Post Malaysia, if she'd have turned around to me 10 years ago and said, Sid, one day you'll be my boss, my response might not have been polite. The challenges Post Malaysia have faced have been huge. We're as a entity, we're still a loss-making business. I think we've just announced our most recent set of results, and whilst some people might not like me drawing attention to them, we're quite proud of them, which sounds weird because we lost about 130 million, which is quite a chunk of money. But that's a long way down from the nearly 500 million we were losing 4 or 5 years ago. We're very lucky to be majority owned by a company that owns a bank, so there's money. But the reality is that we're still, as a group, losing money. The core, Redley, the postal business, various other bits, is actually making money. We lose money on other extraneous things that are being dealt with. That's one of our challenges. As a post, the reputation we had was really bad. 4 or 5 years ago, when I was on a different side of the table, I did a mystery shopper program for Post Malaysia, and the Net Promoter Score was not worth mentioning. It's now very, very positive. We've gone from an average SLA in country of about 60% to having the highest in-country SLA, 96% in Malaysia now, which is above the industry standard. It's about 90%. In a country that's really hard to do that. So I mentioned very briefly, we've got quite a diversified fleet. We even have horses. Yeah, there are parts of Malaysia that it's impossible to get to with vehicles, but we have an SLA and a USO. So what we have done for 200 years is shown we can deliver for Malaysians. What we haven't done so well is shown that we can deliver for others. And Redley's an attempt at proving that. It's already doing its job. Our SLAs in Redley run at about 99%, which is as good as it's going to get. But I would say there's always room for improvement. When you're at 99%, you can really lock down on the ones that have gone wrong, and guarantee when you're at 99%, the ones that have gone wrong are stupid reasons. Yeah. So there are always challenges, but the challenge right now is just to continue the good work and to keep that momentum up. So we have a really fantastic culture program that means that our people are really engaged. And anyone who has bothered to follow me on LinkedIn, please don't put yourself out and do it. But you'll see I talked about it in great detail recently. One, because of for me, the difference between previous places and where I am now. And two, just because how engaged those staff are, how proud they are in what they do. So the major challenge is just keeping that up and carrying on with that process towards group profitability. For Redley, it's just a growth challenge at this stage. Yeah. But thankfully, he says, touching wood, the amount of volume we have coming to us is as much or sometimes more than I maybe would want in a short period of time. And that shows that we're doing something right.
That sounds really good. What are your challenges, but also opportunities to go into expansion in other markets? You're already serving so many countries, but also having a high NPS rate.
Yeah, the NPS is always a challenge. But of course, anyone here who deals with NPS, we know we can make that work. It depends which customer you speak to, yeah? So the focus on the ones who've had a good experience, of course. In terms of going into new countries, largely, again, actually there's some benefits to coming from the national postal operator. We have a regulatory bonus that others maybe don't have because we're part of that UN world that post inhabits. And so getting into other countries, actually we're already in 220 countries by the back door, but we're there. And so the seed element of that is the easy part, actually establishing a foothold. So I alluded to our Middle East presence earlier, largely Saudi Arabia. Most of you will know Malaysia is a Muslim majority country. So we have a huge amount of people that go from and to Saudi every year for Hajj and Umrah. And every year we run a one-off program for Hajj, but we do nothing for Umrah. We outsource it. It makes no sense when we could have a permanent presence. And actually, Hajj cost me a fortune because I'm having to scale up and scale back down. Yeah. So there are opportunities in things like that and in linking nations that are like. But our largest opportunity right now, in my view, is ASEAN, where almost everyone else is focused on places like the UK and Europe, which are regulatory nightmares in some ways, and then the US, which is a different kettle of fish altogether today. The opportunities on our doorstep for growth are huge. Indonesia and Vietnam are fast becoming the powerhouses in terms of manufacturing in the region. Vietnam will very quickly move on now there are troubles in China, if for no other reason than China will now outsource to Vietnam. And actually, if you look at the figures, most of e-commerce volume is actually consumed here. So of the something like 70% of all e-com volume that's produced in the world, that comes from here. 68% of that's consumed here as well. So our biggest opportunity is here in our own back garden.
Here, okay. Never a dull day in shipment and logistics, right? Okay. Any questions from the audience? There you go.
So I was going to say, it's either so good or so bad. There's no answer.
So it seems like it's a lot of work for the 4 weeks to agree in a lot of countries in Europe.
Yeah.
So how did you achieve to have a footprint in UK, in Germany, in the countries you mentioned in such a very short period of time?
It's easier than it sounds as long as you know the right people. Yeah, so this goes all down. I can see Justus laughing because he would say much the same thing, I suspect. It all comes down to who you know often rather than what you know, and that's where the fact. So again, I need to be slightly more open than I was in the presentation. I helped Redley to understand the partnership platform well before I came on board. 2 years ago, when I was at the APP, I helped them to establish that framework. So knowing what they could do made it really easy for me to have conversations that could be moved along quite quickly. clearly having those contacts also makes it really very easy. And our industry is quite a small one. There's thousands of us, but most of us know each other once you get to a certain level, everyone knows everyone. And so picking up the phone and speaking to the right person and frankly having a really direct, straight conversation is very, very easy. So my approach to these things actually doesn't really change whether I'm customer side or partner side. It's just, am I talking about supplying to you or taking from you? Yeah. So I will tell you exactly what I need, how I need it, when I need it, and I'll ask you to tell me how we can do it. It's no more or less complex than that. If the answer is no, great, quick conversation, move on to the next contact in the list. Thankfully for those countries clearly I'm British, so the UK was really easy because that's my home ground. I knew people I could speak to, friends in effect. Germany, Italy, Spain, actually these are people I've been working with for years. So there is an element in this where, and it sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, I hate it in that sense, but where the person you've got doing that role, it's all down to their contacts and how long they've been around and who knows them and have they upset the wrong person or made the right person happy. There is also just an element of the framework needs to be there to enable it to back me up. So for me to be able to say to my team, right, I have you a carrier in the UK, I've got you a 3PL, I need this, now integrate them, get them running, that's where the hard work comes in. And it was purely down to that partnership platform being in place, us having the right technology, the right SOPs, the right processes there to do it.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the audience? No? Are they able to find you in the booth?
We're at the end of the building there, big red booth, big red guy, you can't really miss it.
Can't miss.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.